Hello, everyone, and welcome. Welcome, one and all, to Housewives Book Club.
Woo!
I'm Molly Mulshine.
I'm Jen Keefe. What a great intro, Molly.
Thank you. I really used my Dorit voice, honestly.
Ooh, a PK, a baby.
A bubba, a piquet. All right. I'm Molly. She's Jen. We're doing this podcast. It's called Housewives Book Club. This is the first episode. There might be a few kinks that we still need to work out. So just call us kinky and don't get mad that our audio quality is not amazing this time. It will get better next week.
Mm-hmm.
So Jen is an actor.
Mm-hmm.
You may know her from Orange is the New Black. She played a masshole. I hope you don't mind me saying that. I don't
Not
know
at
if
all.
I don't have a masshole card because I'm from Jersey, but I think I know you well enough. I'm allowed to say it.
Yes, you can. Yep, proudly a masshole. Yeah.
She's a hilarious person. Check her YouTube channel if you want to see her dancing to Like Mariah by Fifth Harmony.
That's a throwback if anyone knows that song. Wow.
Okay, now Jen, do you want to give me an intro?
I do. This is my dear friend Molly Mulshine. In fact, she married me, performed me and my wife's wedding ceremony. You might know her from her frequent appearances on the Michelle Collins show. You might know her from famous podcast ventures such as Diva Behavior, Space Trash. You might know her from being on TikTok, being funny, being talking about motherhood, sounding off in Substack. In this town of Dublin, you got to do it all, baby. And Molly does.
We're here
Please.
to talk about the novel. It's not a novel. It's a memoir.
The memoir.
It's a memoir because you know damn well Dorit does not pronounce the R.
You think she's out here saying, a PK, I'm writing my memoir.
Yes, 100%. My memoir. And then PK is like, babe, it's our memoir. Because did you get to the part in the book when some of the cracks started to show in their marriage when she started to say my show about housewives and PK would get mad at her? He had the audacity to get mad at her for saying my show.
No, I have not gotten to that part. I'm sorry. But that's
Yeah.
insane.
Well, we're both doing a really good job on our first week of the pod because neither of us has finished the book.
But that's because there's so much to talk about in the first 3 quarters.
Exactly. And we only have, this is going to be a short and sweet ep. This is going to be a 2-parter, maybe even a 3-parter. Also, we need to get in touch with our attorneys. We need to do some litigation. We need to do some really deep research into a lot of the topics that are covered into this book. We've like barely scratched the surface, even just reading it. So,
yeah. I want to jump into the very beginning when Dorit she kind of cold opens the book at the Lux Resort in Utah called, now you might have to correct me on the pronunciation, listeners, Amangiri. I knew we were off to the races when the cold opening of the book is about the adversity she faced on a hike at Amangiri. Now, for those who don't know, Amangiri is a resort in the United States in Utah, in the desert, in the mountains. Looks beautiful, but it's like $10,000 a night.
This is what I loved about the beginning of this book because she jumps straight into, I'm sorry, I will say it, kind of victim mode, I feel. With the resort stay. It's like I had been going through so much with the most recent season of Housewives that I just needed to get away. I needed to tune out for a couple days. And she finds herself at, this luxury resort. And you're like, Dorit, maybe not the anecdote if you're going for like every woman, but I don't know if she's going for every woman. I don't think she ever is. And this is one of the huge questions I have about Dorit, which is how much money does she have? How much money does she actually have? And we're going to peel back the layers on this. And I know it's tacky to wonder, but listen, I'm tacky. I want to know. But yeah, she goes to the resort and she talks about how hard it was to summon the courage to climb a rock face of some sort, which was
you mean the Via Ferrata?
Ferrata, yes. It was so hard for her to dig deep and find the strength to do this completely voluntary thing that someone was being paid to help her do. It was so funny. It was like a pickleball lesson. It was like, no, you're just choosing to do this. I'm sure it was really hard. It sounded really hard, but it was so funny because she was like, as I was being driven to the Via Ferrata, and I'm like, yeah, of course you were being driven. And she was like, it wasn't a luxury SUV like the one that picked me up from the airport. It was a Jeep. And it's like, oh,
It's
wow.
like you still had a luxury, you still had a Yukon picking you up from this tiny airport. Also, I looked up the Via Ferrata because I was like, wow, she's really making the metaphor for the adversity she is climbing based on a man-made rock wall at this 5-star resort.
I,
And
I have to say it's a good metaphor. I think it's spot on.
I was picturing, I don't know if you've ever dabbled in the rock climbing arts, but I'm picturing like those fake rocks at like Brooklyn boulders.
Yeah.
It's not that. It is built into a cliff, but they put metal ladder steps.
It's literally like a handle that you grab. Dorit goes up the Via Ferrata and she makes it. Surprise! It's just challenging enough to make a rich lady feel like she's accomplished something huge, which honestly, that's what I'm looking for on vacation. I get it. I love that. It sounds great. And she uses it as some sort of metaphor for being on reality TV. And
Mhm.
the funny thing about this, and this is sort of a trope in the genre of Real Housewives memoirs, I have read a lot and I'm going to reread them as part of this project. I love them so much. One thing that they frequently do is they start the book at directly where the last season left off. And for me, who's more of a historian of Real Housewives, who's coming at these books years later, depending on what kind of rewatches I'm doing, it's always quite disorienting because you kind of are looking for the big picture of this woman's life and you're just getting dropped directly into the last season that she was on.
I didn't mind it. It felt like a cold open that was a flash forward to the future. And then I forget in the second chapter where we start. It's about, I think, her parents, where they
I
grew up.
I think she goes into smoking a cig on camera. That is you're like, again, really life or death kind of stuff. Let's talk about the setup of this book, by the way, on screen this year. So they do always on Bravo set up the books. They always are going to tease them because, as we all know, of course, we don't know the vagaries of every single housewife's contract, but most of them have agreed to give Bravo a percentage of the profits of any product that they promote on Bravo's shows. So it is in
Hmm.
Bravo's interest to let them have a book storyline because if the book sells, Bravo will get a cut.
I didn't know that. So anytime a housewife is promoting a brand on camera, Bravo's going to get a cut of that product.
Yes, I can't believe you don't know this because the famous exception, famous because she talks about it every week on TikTok, is Bethany. She calls it the Bethany Clause because you will remember Bethany launched Skinny Girl on season 1 of Real Housewives of New York City. Or maybe, no, that was Bethany Bakes. Skinny Girl came in 2 or 3. But she said she negotiated, even though she was a total nobody in the beginning, she was the ne'er-do-well. She was the one with no money, no husband. But even with that going on, she negotiated in her contract that Bravo would not get a cut of anything she promoted. And she claims to be the only person who has done that, but she claims to be the only person who's done a lot of things. So I'm sure there's been other people that have done that. I mean, a lot of these women are really smart and savvy. I don't know why I feel like Heather Dubrow probably would have negotiated that out because her husband's been on TV forever. They know what they're doing. But yeah, she calls it the Bethany Clause. And if you're watching a season and you're like, who cares about this woman's book? I don't care. It's because Bravo might be getting a cut of the proceeds. And that's true of any product that they are selling on Bravo. So in this most recent season of Beverly Hills, Dorit was talking all about the book. One of the funny things that came up was that Amanda Francis shamed her for using a ghostwriter.
Mm-hmm.
She just
Mm-hmm.
said, well, I just sat down and wrote.
Crazy. We know that's not true.
Really? You don't think it's true that Amanda Francis wrote it on her own?
Well, aren't her books self-published? So maybe you're right, and she did write them on her own because they're self-published.
I don't know. I'm a writer, so it's easy for me to say, but I feel like it wouldn't be that hard to just sit down and write a housewives memoir because a lot of them are full on Jack Kerouac stream of consciousness. It's just like sentence, sentence, catchphrase, 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 sentence. You know what I mean? It reads like they dictated it into a tape recorder and someone typed it. And if that's ghostwriting, girl, get me that gig. I would love to be a ghostwriter for real, but a lot of them, you're just kind of like, really, a real writer worked on this? Because I feel like you could have done it on your own.
I have to say, this ghostwriter, I believe it's two, a mother-daughter, famously, as Dorit spoke about this season. They're good. There were some literary turns of phrase. These ghostwriters really put two ghostly ass cheeks into this.
They did. Well, yes, I agree. There were some really beautiful passages and
Yeah.
some really, really wise aphorisms that I was
Yes.
like, I wonder if this was Dorit or if this was the ghost. But then at the
Mhm.
same time, there were some things that did, and I hate to desecrate another writer in this way, but I did think a little bit about ChatGPT once in a while. And I'm not saying they used it, but I am saying right now we are on such high alert for ChatGPT. And this is the type of turn of phrase that sends everybody's alarm bells ringing. And
M
the
dashes.
phrasing is it wasn't this, it was this. And she has that in the first third, especially, which a lot of the time is how you sell a book. You send the first 3 chapters or the first like 20% of it to different agents to pitch it. So I was like, I wonder if they use ChatGPT to zhuzh this up a little bit because there were so many phrases like that. Like, for instance, she's talking about one of the guys. She had 2 fiancés before she met PK. And she says it wasn't about a lack of love. It was about knowing that love alone does not guarantee forever. And it's just such a weird way to phrase that. Do you know what I mean? And
Mhm.
a lot of the time, another construction that they have in here is she's always saying, and I think this is real to read because it reveals a certain way of thinking. She'll say things like, breakfast wasn't just an abstract idea. It was a meal with food. Like, that's not a direct quote, but it's something. She says things like that over and
Mhm.
over and over again. And it was making me laugh so hard because it was like, yeah, we know. We know that these things you're describing are real things. So it just was interesting to me to think that this is how her brain works. So this one, we were not just having a baby, we were meeting our son. Yeah, you were doing both. Everyone who has a baby is meeting their son or daughter. It was just
Mhm.
things like that all the time. My love for them, for her kids, isn't decorative, it's directional. What are you talking?
Yeah, no, that's very very AI. I'm looking over my highlights right now. It wasn't this, it's this. All of them, practically all of them have an M dash.
I
One
love
that
an M dash, and this is where I need to not throw stones when I live in a glass house, because this is the thing. I mean, you can accuse anyone nowadays of using ChatGPT, and it's not fair because I'm sure these 2 professional ghostwriters didn't do it, but I'm just saying these are the things that piqued me.
yeah,
Piqued my interest. Motherhood didn't just soften me, it clarified me. Is this a butter metaphor? And I do think that she came up with that because it's so goofy. I don't even think ChatGPT would come up with it.
I laughed out loud at this sentence. She's talking about when she moved from Italy back to the United States, specifically New York. She said, "When I returned to the States, word spread quickly that I was home, dash, and single. The matchmakers went to work." The matchmakers went to work, like as if that's the logical next thing that we, the reader, are thinking about when she's telling us she moved from Italy back to New York.
Yeah, she's like, don't get it twisted. The matchmakers clocked in.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so we're enjoying these ghostwriters despite some of the AI. What else would we like to talk about from the beginning 3/4 of this book?
I really like how much she idealizes Europe. I think it's really silly and cute.
Careful.
I know. I know. I'm like, I want to hear more about this. She goes, there was passion, travel, beauty, that intoxicating European way of living where dinner stretches long into the night and everything feels cinematic. I spent some of my most defining years in Europe. I grew up there, comma. emotionally. So I'm like, okay. And then you move back to New York and you meet PK and you're like, all we did was have long dinners. And it was so, and I'm like, okay, what do you mean it's cinematic and you love long dinners? Maybe you are just fun. I don't know if it has to do with Europe, but it's like cute and funny. She's the girl that studied abroad. She's me. I would have to restrain myself from writing 5 chapters about my 6-week study abroad in my memoir. And this is why I've always loved Dorit, because I also feel like I'm a child of the world.
Where did you study abroad?
Paris,
Okay.
of course.
You
And I
saying
was
you have to restrain yourself is so funny.
I am obsessed with Paris. I'm obsessed with speaking French. One time you and Melissa were, I don't know where we were, but I was like, "Oh, I love Dorit. I feel like we're the same person." And you were like, you guys were like, "Wow, like don't flatter yourself."
No way.
Yes, you were. I think she must have been having an up season, but you both were like,
No
"Oh, okay."
way. No
Yeah.
way. You're crazy. We would
You
never
were,
say
because
that.
I feel like I'm a child of the world like Dorit. Dorit is more of a child of the world than I am. Let's talk.
On that note, obviously her accent has been critiqued and a huge talking point. Now reading about her family, I'm a little bit more understanding of her accent.
Yes. And also, she leans into it. But yes, I love it. It's so kooky. This is what we want in a housewife. We want this kookiness. Let's go through the rundown of the family. So her grandparents on her mom's side, they lived in Tangiers, Morocco, but
Mhm.
spoke Spanish, which was a bomb that she dropped. That she has an
Yes.
abuela. I
The
was like,
abuela, I highlighted abuela.
now you've got an abuela? We all know the confessionals where she's like, "Parlo italiano, je parle français." And she goes through all the languages. And I'm like, never did abuela factor in.
No,
And
it
now we're
didn't.
learning that her mom grew up speaking Spanish.
Yeah, that was a mic drop.
It was. It built credibility. So on her mom's side, they grew up in Morocco. That was during a time that Tangiers was, it was some sort of like zone that was controlled by the UK,
Multiple
France, and
governments,
another
yeah.
country, yeah, and then when they stopped doing that, which is like, I guess a hangover from what's going on in Casablanca, the movie. It was like a real melange of governing
Mhm.
bodies, if I
Mhm.
remember correctly. So then they leave Morocco and they go to Argentina, which was a wild choice.
Yeah. Did they have some extended family there? Am I remembering that?
Yeah, it must have been family. She was like, they had all the money in the world and everything, but it still didn't make them safe. They couldn't actually reveal to people what their religion was because they didn't feel like it was safe. And then things escalated even more in Argentina. And that's when her mom's parents moved to Poland. And that's where her parents met in Poland, right?
And I think so.
I know every time I read a biography or a memoir, I get the parents and the grandparents so shook up
Yes.
in my head.
Yeah, you're telling me this and I thought, "Wait, I thought Dorit was in Argentina." But no, she never was.
No, she was not, but she'll take on the accent.
Right.
It's
Right.
genetic.
Right. Yeah.
So her grandparents meet
Poland.
in Poland.
Mhm.
She talks about what it was like when the Holocaust began in Poland. There was a real bone-chilling passage. She
Mm.
talked about how it started to happen in just the most mundane way, where
Yes.
you were in your house and everything was normal, and then all of a sudden these thugs just beat down the door. They would bang on the door with the butt of a rifle and
Mhm.
they would just come in and take you, and you would look back at your family and that was the last time you ever saw your family. She really nailed a feeling that most people don't think about.
Yes, she served a bit of history.
They came to her grandfather's house. He was one of 6 kids, I think. They took his parents and they took all his siblings and they separated all of them. Years later, he sees somebody in the old neighborhood, I think, in Poland. And the guy's like, "Wait, what's your name?" And he tells him his name. And he's like, "Where are your parents?" And Dorit's grandfather is like, "No, my parents died. They're not alive anymore." And the guy is like, "No, they're in Israel." And he's like, "No, they're not. They're dead." And then he writes a letter to his parents. He gets the address and writes to them. And this is how traumatized people were. They were like, "We don't want to ever hear from you again because you're not our son. And we want nothing to do with this." So he moved there anyway and went and found them and showed up on their doorstep. And it had been 20 years since they thought all of their kids died. Can you imagine?
That blew my mind.
It was, oh my God, just
Really devastating.
so crazy and horrible. And then Dorit says that's where she got the strength to be a real housewife of Beverly Hills.
Yo, you're so right.
I'm not kidding. That's how she ended the chapter.
Yes. Yeah,
She
the
was like,
generational resilience led her to
yeah. I was like, wow, she's really doing that. And then I was like, you know what? I bet you her grandparents are like, yeah, that's why we survived. So that our grandkids could go on Bravo. So that they wouldn't have to go through this stuff. So I was like,
Mhm.
who am I? Who the hell am
Yeah.
I to be like, this isn't how you should process that?
Exactly. Exactly. Why don't we move on to PK?
Oh, yeah. So Pink, I really was surprised. Again, speaking of structure, she starts with the flash forward to, the collateral of this season, the thing out the window. And then she kind of went immediately into her PK love story. That was sort of the structure of the book. To quote Dorit, we were creating a life with scaffolding and we were doing it with intention. Yeah, unlike all those other people who just throw scaffolding up and don't think about how they're doing it.
Uh to
Classic
to
Doritism.
add on to that, a highlight I have. The connection was there. I've never been drawn to a man purely for how he looks.
I know, I loved that.
Like, the insinuation, obviously, she's confessing, yeah, he's not a looker.
Their love story is like the scaffolding of this book, which I wasn't expecting. It's sort of a divorce memoir, really, which is similar to Ramona's memoir, which I don't know if anyone's read it, Life on the Ramona Coaster. It's so good. And Ramona's memoir actually has so many gory details. We are going to do it. We're going to read it. So many insane details of her divorce from Mario. But yeah, so
Sure.
this one is honestly not really that tawdry. She's pretty magnanimous about PK.
Yes. Prior to their divorce, like with any couple in the Bravo universe, we speculate why these younger, more beautiful women are with older, uglier men. And that question was amplified by the fact that PK's finances are obviously extremely rocky, allegedly. But I always thought when I saw them on camera that she truly loved him. And that really came across in how she writes about their origin story.
She worships him. She's like,
Yeah.
oh my God, she has bought into the PK line, hook, line, and sinker. He's very funny. I always loved watching him on the show. Sorry. I know that I don't think he's turned into a cad. I think he always was, but he liked his odds with Dorit in terms of becoming a star. He thought that it was going to go well and everything. And now he has turned away from her. It seems clear that this is a pattern for him. This is another major, major oversight of this book is in addition to what was Dorit's business, she mentions it so many times. I have no idea what your business was. She never mentions it by name, never even gives it a product. She could have been selling Q-tips, like she just doesn't say it. But the other thing is, what was the deal with PK's first family? And where were they living? And who was his wife? How divorced were they when they met? And I mean, maybe she's being discreet. Maybe she's just like, they're not public figures. They don't want to talk about it. But I also
She could have said that if that were the case. Yeah.
she did mention her stepson a few times. It seems like
Yep.
they're close and they have a good relationship.
He held Jagger down the aisle at PK and Dorit's wedding.
Very cute in the rainbow room. Similar to Summer House Reunion, which, Jen, we haven't even talked about
Let's
over
not.
text.
Let's
Yeah,
not.
which is crazy. But Summer House this week, you're watching Amanda step into the pattern that she has observed her friend West partake in over and over and over again of acting like he's really into someone and hooking up with them and complimenting them and doing boyfriend shaped things and then bailing at a certain point and insisting that there's no label. We've all seen guys do that. We're watching her go into that with her eyes wide open and we all want to know, what are you thinking? What are you doing? And this is an example in Dorit's book where I want to know, what was she thinking? What was she doing? You're starting to go out with a guy who has a pretty young family that he left behind in another country. At no point were you like, okay, why isn't he hanging out with his kids? Or was he hanging out with his kids? Stick up for him. I want to know, because now he's leaving her and she's like, he's in another country all the time. He's never here. And it's like, well, isn't that what he did to his first wife? I want to know how you process that, because it looks that way to me. That's the kind of thing that I'm dying to know how someone thinks about that when they're the one going through
I
it.
didn't even clock that, because the relationship that I saw is that PK was always away from Dorit and Jagger in Phoenix. Like, he was always ambiguously away for business. And I just assumed, of course, he's not present with his children from his first and second marriages. That's interesting you thought of that. Yeah, I mean, if I were Dorit, I would have questions. But given the context that this is PK, I was like, yeah, of course, he's just messing around in New York all the time with his new girlfriend.
Right. I think he's just such a charmer and he knows how to talk. And she just was so enamored of him. She loved him so much. Two really great Dorit sentences. And again, I want to say, I'm sorry for even bringing up ChatGPT, because no AI could come up with this stuff. The only reason I brought it up is because it's got that parallel structure that everybody says is
Yeah.
AI, but this is definitely straight from Dorit's brain. We had always traveled, but this felt less like movement and more like distance. What does travel feel like movement?
What is she talking about?
Talking about when PK started to sort of lose interest in the marriage. She says, we had always traveled and he's
Oh,
hanging out in London all the time, but this felt less like movement and more like distance.
I actually understand the distinction.
Okay, walk me through it.
Movement is a dynamic action together. Distance, to me, is 2 points maintaining space away from each other.
Yeah, but
I don't know. I get that metaphor. I see you, Dorit. I see you.
okay. I would argue that travel as a rule involves both movement and distance. In my experience. And I also never have I traveled and been like, this feels like movement. Maybe when I'm on the plane, it feels a little forced. And then the second one that I really liked, she says that when he was going on these extended business trips, it was not malicious, it was misaligned.
Well, again, she just thinks so highly of him.
I know. Yeah, you're right. You're
Or
right.
she's saying there's no bad intent. We just weren't communicating. I just have to say, as someone who has worked at startups for a long time now, PK is the CEO of every startup CEO I've ever met. Like, they are horrendous to wait staff. You just know that PK is a nightmare at a restaurant. A story that illustrated this was the one about the pregnancy tests at the hotel in London at 2 a.m. when he demanded that a bellhop go get 20 pregnancy tests. And then they brought back ovulation tests by mistake, and he sent them back. Dorit setting it up as, when PK wants something, he wants it. That's passion. Stuff like that. I just know that he is a nightmare to deal
That
with.
was so horrifying. And then they made them go out again. They said, these are ovulation tests. Try again. They brought back a new pregnancy test. It was positive, and Dorit said, we need more. And she made them go out a third time to get more and lay them all out on the bed and wait for the lines to appear. It was so horrible. And this is when I'm like, okay, how much money exactly did you grow up with? This is what I'm dying to know. Because also, after she gets back from Italy, from her like study abroad or whatever, she comes back and gets a waitressing job. And she's like, wow, I couldn't believe it. Now, if I wanted an apartment, I could buy it myself. And I'm like, where were you waitressing? Because when I was waitressing, I was like, damn, I still can't afford anything.
I know. Well,
It's interesting.
we'll never know. Who hid? Was it her dad? Was it Papa? Was it great Papa? Who hid their money in a Swiss bank?
Someone did that. Someone did, yeah. It was when they went to Argentina, I think. They left it up.
So that must have been her
It might have been her
grandfather.
great-grandfather. Sorry, everyone, that we're getting the
Okay.
greats and the grands confused. I also wanted a
Yeah.
lot more details of PK's bankruptcies and his business. What is PK's business? Is his whole business managing?
I can tell
Okay.
you. Yeah, it's just managing. And managers, I know this from the acting business. Of course, not speaking about my manager, but managers require no accreditation from my understanding,
Mm.
and you can just sort of decide to be a manager. And from the experience of many of my peers in acting, my friends have had so many shady experiences with management folks. And it makes 110% sense to me that I learned in this book that, oh, PK's
He
business
it's
is
it's
talent management.
grifter-friendly territory. Yeah. So I thought it was
Yes.
so funny when he signs Boy George as a client. First of all, how? Dorit is so in love with him and thinks he's such a genius that all she does is talk about what a genius he is, but doesn't really give you any examples of deals or anything like that. For example, he first signs Pele, the soccer legend, and she goes into this whole spiel
Hmm.
about how instead of managing brands, PK manages legacies, and you can turn a name into something historical, and Pele's name wasn't being utilized to its full potential, and that's what PK told him, and that's how he signed him, and I was like, "Girl, I learned about Pele in 4th grade, and I haven't heard about him since he signed with PK, so I don't know."
I loved how disparate those two clients are,
Right.
Boy George and Pele.
I just loved that when he signed
Yeah,
Boy
no.
George, he moved him into his house right away, and the first action that he took
Yeah.
was to shop around a sizzle reel of PK, Dorit, and Boy George. Can you release the
So,
tapes, first of all? Second of all,
release
can
the
you imagine you
tapes.
sign with a new manager and he's like, "I've got it, babe. I've got the idea. Sizzle reel, you, me, Dorit." You're like, "I wrote Karma Chameleon, and now you're having me do a
Uh,
sizzle reel hanging out in the kitchen with your wife, and we're gonna shop it around? What am I
mm,
doing here? I'm going back to London." Like, are you joking? So she does a lot of, like, she says an entire thing that she did, and then she goes, "But I didn't do that." And this is one example where they make the sizzle reel, they send it to Bravo, they send it everywhere. Next, she gets cast on Real Housewives, and she's like, "I wasn't seeking TV fame. I've never sought it." And it's like, Dorit, you were shopping a sizzle
mhm.
reel to networks. What
Yeah,
are you
they
talking
all
about?
like to pretend that they were pushed into housewives and that it was their decision to leave when they leave. To be a housewife is to push that narrative that I never wanted to be on reality TV.
Right. And it's like, you just told us about the
Yep.
tape. So PK had said when they moved to LA, the only thing you can do to get noticed in this town, someone said to him, was be a billionaire who donates millions to
Mhm.
charity, be a studio head, or be a celebrity. So this is when PK starts to kind of try and Pygmalion Dorit into being a celebrity. I'm really interested in talking next week about what the turning point was. When did he decide he was sick of this trajectory that she was on? Because he clearly tired of it at some point. He didn't want to play the game anymore and he wanted to
Mhm.
get out. We're going to talk about the break-in that happened to Dorit. We're going to talk about Puppygate
Oof.
because honestly, I need to do some
We
more
need to
research
yeah,
on
we
it.
need to get into the archives.
I'm going to find the Puppygate Zapruder film and I'm going to be analyzing it like
Yes,
game
I can't
tape.
wait.
And lots of other stuff. We're going to go a little deeper on the divorce financials because some stuff leaked a couple weeks ago that Dorit's outgoing on retail is 500 grand a month and PK has 450K in the bank. Now, are we doing Swiss bank accounts? What is going on with this? So the plot is going to thicken even more next week. We're going to also finish the last 25% of the
Yep.
book, which is also
Yeah.
so exciting.
Yeah. Thank you, everyone, listeners, watchers, for tuning in. This has been Housewives Book Club.
Housewives Book Club.